Check 1, 2.
Go! Curious about real estate? Yes! Then you've come to the right place. Get the knowledge you need. Get over the fear and get started. This is the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show with your host, Michael Quarles.
Hello, everybody. Michael Quarles with podcast number 155. We have 5 questions sent in by real estate investors. And remember, if you have a question, send it to support@bsffacademy.com. One more time, support@bsffacademy.com. Here we go. Question number 1. Who is Angel and what does he or she do? I keep hearing this name in the podcast and in the forums, but I still don't understand the role. Our angels are the last person who does negotiation. So we get it under contract or we don't get it under contract. So there's 2 types of negotiation that we're going to have an angel do. So if we have something under contract, keep in mind that we're always contracting cash and then converting it to terms. It's the angel that converts it to terms after the Ryan exhausts that possibility. The other thing that the angel does is they look at the agreements. So we got to a point where we made an offer to a seller and the seller said no. The angel then looks at those offers and tries to reconvert them into an acceptable offer because, as you know, cash is our lowest valued offer. So it's the lowest value to the seller. Well, we're able to increase the value to the seller if the seller accepts terms, but we're not negotiating that with a Ryan. We're only negotiating that with an angel. So the seller who, let's say as an example, let's assume for a second that I would have bought something at 70 cents on the dollar with seller financing on a 15-year amortized note, 5-year balloon. Let's assume that's the case. The Ryan's not negotiating that as the primary negotiation tool. So they're going to negotiate 60 cents. Let's assume that for a second. So that 10% spread could have been the difference in the seller's opinion on declining the offer. Where when the angel goes back and says, I can give you this other 10%, but in order to give you that 10%, which the seller can say yes to, we have to have that on terms. And so that's what the angel does. And again, the reason they're called angels is because that's a guy and a girl name, much like the Alex and the Ryan. Question number 2. If I have 2 separate sellers who have double wide trailers they want to sell, they have been brick foundation FHA proof straps. Do you suggest I move forward with these or do you think I should stay away? No, at the point that they're FHA approved and strapped down, they're property. I mean, they're real property. They're not motor vehicle property anymore, or they're not licensed with the motor vehicle. Confirm with your title escrow closing company that they actually do these types of escrows, but they should, or closings, because again, they're real property once it's secured to the foundation. I've done several. They're not the easiest to sell, but let's face it, they're typically mitigated because of lower value, and so they're going to be lower cost to a retail buyer, which sometimes that's advantageous for an area because sometimes buyers, especially where those units are located, have capital issues. So I don't think you have an issue with that. Now, find out how normal that is. If it's normal, then there's no issue at all. If it's really abnormal, like it's really looked upon negatively in the marketplace, then whatever I say, it doesn't really matter because your marketplace is going to dictate what you should and shouldn't do. And how you would find that out is, call around 6 or 7 realtors, Century 21, Prudential, Coldwell Banker, Fred Sands, all those places. And if you have multiples of them, call multiples of them. Call them on different days. Different people are going to answer the phone because the up desk is the desk that agents work on a 2-hour or 4-hour basis kind of thing. So their job is to answer the phone when it rings for that period of time. So you call multiple times and get multiple opinions and find out for yourself what your local marketplace is willing to accept. I don't see an issue with it once it's strapped down. Again, confirm that your closing escrow company can actually perform, because one of the negatives in some things like contracts for deeds, land contracts, performance contracts, those kinds of things, that takes a special kind of closing person. And when we start deviating from what's normal, then it starts costing us more because we have to find those people. We have to create relationships, although we're supposed to be creating relationships on a constant basis. But sometimes it just takes more work. So when we're going out there and buying the traditional, quote unquote, properties, and we've already had those relationships in order to close it and to get the inspections and those kinds of things, established, well, those are easier transactions, so we don't have an issue with those. But anytime we start going into something that's non-performing, and then we're going to have to create relationships to have that, to structure the non-performing and have someone carry out those instructions. So just keep that in mind. I don't have an issue with the properties as long as they're FHA strapped. Question number 3, what would be the correct objection handler for this phrase? I can't believe you're so unprepared that you haven't done any research on the house. Do your research and call me back with an offer. Well, I just say thank you very much and go to the next caller. That's an indication. Here's what they're really saying. I'm not motivated to sell my house. But let's face it, you have a broken arm. So your arm's broken. I mean, from your elbow to your wrist, that part of your arm is broken. There's the other parts of your arm, I'm sure. But that's the part that's broken. And it's not just broken. It's like half of it's hanging towards the ground when you try to hold it parallel to the ground. So it's absolutely broken. Or you're going to call up for the cheapest price in town on who's going to set the arm and how much experience they have and have them get back to you. No. You're going to call 911 and an ambulance is going to come get you, and they're going to come and take you to the closest hospital that can set that arm correctly for you. You're not going to care who the doctor is, what they look like, anything about the doctor. All you're going to care about is that your broken arm's fixed. And a seller that says, call me back, I can't believe you're not prepared to give me a price. One, is not participating the way we need them to, but 2, they're telling us loud and clear, I'm not ready to sell my house. I don't care where they get the knowledge from, any ridiculously trained real estate professional out there. Someone wants to go out there and say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, your house is worth $200,000. Slap that seller across the face because the seller thought their house was worth $300,000, and they're giving them a reality check. I'm going to let anybody else give them that reality check. I'm not going to do it. I need them to be in reality land when they call me and highly motivated. Let them talk to all the other non-professional or unprofessional people out there. Let them wait for that call to come back to them for, weeks and get so frustrated with everybody else that when they call me and they hear my embedded commands when we set an appointment tomorrow to buy your house with 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock be better. When they hear all the embedded commands, when they hear the positive and negative reinforcements, the mimicking, the pacing, the neurolinguistics over the phone, and yes, that's possible, then they're going to understand that I'm a professional and they're dealing with professionals, and now they can start contributing to the process of selling their house. Anybody else short of that, be polite, because you're going to call them back in 15, 30, 60, 90 as they become more motivated. But in the beginning, if someone says that, kick them to the curb. You can't lose what you don't have. It's like saying, man, here you are. You look at this girl or this guy and they're Mr. Gorgeous or Miss Beautiful, and you get frustrated that they're married to somebody else. You can't look at it like that. You just have to go out and get your own, relationship going. Wait for it to come to you, but don't get all bent out of shape because you can't solve someone's problem. They have to start solving their own problem. My goodness.
Thanks for listening to Buy, Sell, Fix, Flip. We'll be right back. Are you running out of leads? It's time you tried Yellow Letters at yellowletters.com. Get motivated seller leads through yellow letters, postcards, zip letters, typed professional letters, greeting cards, door hangers, and business cards. Yellow Letters is a full-service marketing company created with your success in mind. Get the personal attention you need to get your direct mail campaign started, and get in touch at yellowletters.com.
And we are back in 3, 2, 1.
Is it necessary on all deals to have an appraisal and a BPO done? Also, do you have home inspections in every house you purchase through your system? That's 2 questions. Someone cheated. I'm just kidding. Is it necessary? No, it's not necessary. It's not like air and water and food kind of stuff. I mean, those are the only 3 necessities we have in life, I think. And other than that, nothing's necessary. Is it prudent? Well, I think so. I mean, here's the thing. I can do an appraisal or I can do a CMA on a piece of property much like an appraiser would do. 30-some years of experience and being a broker and member of the board and all that kind of good stuff. I understand valuation really well. Why would I want to use my own opinion? Remember what they say. The guy that represents himself has a fool for a client. Why do I want to represent myself? Why do I want to take my own opinion when it's only going to cost me $150 for a BPO at the very most, and $450 at the most for an appraisal? $600. We're buying properties where we're making 50 grand, and you can't invest less than 1% of that? Give me a break. Or I guess that's a little bit more than 1%, isn't it? I think you got to do it. So is it necessary? I think so, but it's not necessary. It's not like, again, food, water, and air. And you have home inspection. I rarely have a home inspection done. Your BPO and your appraisal and your pictures from your prospect. That's going to tell you a lot. Now, I believe that I may know a little bit more about construction than a lot of people, since I've built quite a few houses and I have my general building contractor's license, and I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rehabs, and I guess a couple remodels, unfortunately. But the reports from the BPO agent and the appraiser is going to come with what they think the ARV requirements are from a cost perspective. And when you look at a picture, you can kind of see ugly. You can look at it and go, gosh, I got to do this and I got to do that. Now, you also have to look at what other your comps are doing, which is the beautiful thing about the appraisal. The appraisal is actually going to give you pictures of your comparable sales as well. So then you can actually really zero in on why the appraisers appraising the way that they are. And the BPO may or may not. Most of them probably won't go be that thorough, which is why the appraisal, I think, is also nice. But it's also nice to have an appraisal because that's a lendable instrument, where a BPO is not, kind of thing. It's a cursory review from a lender's perspective, but it's not a lendable document. So no inspection, and I think you should, but that's just my opinion. Question number 5. Currently, 1/3 of my business comes from bandit sites. Congratulations, although I think it's breaking the law. I have been able to help good people out of bad situations with these signs. They are illegal in my city. Well, so you're promoting doing stuff illegally. Okay. And last year I was cited to court and had to pay a small fine. Well, it's got to just cost of marketing, isn't it? And then you have to look at the ethics and morality of it, I guess. I mean, if you have kids, let's look at it this way. So I'm telling, as I raise my children, I try to raise them in a way that causes them to be successful from an ethics and moral and a legal perspective. So, here I am, I'm out there breaking the law, but I'm telling my kids that, so, you got to do it a different way. You can't look at life the way you'd like to. You have to look at it based upon how it affects other people. And, you're not supposed to walk on people, and you're not supposed to break the law legally, and you're not supposed to do these things. But don't worry about what I'm doing. I'm just letting you know you're not supposed to be doing, although I'm breaking the law. Continuing on with the question. Yesterday, a police officer served me with summons to court over my signs. I stopped counting at 52 violations. Congratulations. The possible fine is nearly $15,000. My attorney says that there is a new Supreme Court decision that says the city's discrimination of signs based upon content is a violation of the First Amendment. In other words, since my city allows political signs in the orange sign but not real estate signs, is a violation of free speech. That being said, I'm considering filing a federal lawsuit against the city. I think it's unfair that politicians exempt themselves from their own sign ordinance and find the sign ordinance to be obtrusive. Would you recommend doing this? No, I don't. You know what? And I know who wrote this. I would just get to work. I guess it's not a big enough fight that I care. And, I have a really good friend of mine that was fined a lot of money for his bandit sign issue. And he was taken to court, and his argument was that he was beautifying the city with the houses that he bought using his bandit signs. And the court looked at him and said, great, thank you very much. But here, I will reduce your fine to this amount if you pay it today. And of course, he thanked the judge for reducing the amount because he reduced it considerably, paid his fine, and went on his way, and he doesn't use bandit signs anymore. I think the only bandit sign that you should use, there's 2 of them, maybe 3 of them. So you can do a bus bench, great bandit sign. You can do a vehicle that has a wrap, just a gray bandit sign. Or you can do the other type of bandit sign, which is a billboard. And, just because you can't afford to do those things doesn't mean that you should circumvent the law, in my opinion anyway. Shame on you. I mean, once it becomes a law, then you want to use bandit signs, use bandit signs. Absolutely fall forward. But to circumvent it because you can't afford to do something else, and I know you can afford it. That's what's crazy about the question is you said a third of your business. Well, 2/3 comes from something else. So just do more of that and stop breaking the laws. Because how are you going to raise children and ask them to uphold to a moral and an ethical standard that you're not willing to uphold to? I just don't understand the hypocriticalness of that. And sometimes you have to look at stuff like that. It's not about what you are doing yourself and by yourself. It's how it's affecting those people around you and the credibility that you have in their opinion, their eyes, and what you're trying to gain by the big picture of life. And, if you want to get into a class action and some attorney wants to take it on that represents banditsigns.com or yardsigns.com or all the other sites out there, yeah, do that, be part of that. But in the meantime, do what's right, do what's legal. And I think it's irresponsible not to. Just because the law doesn't benefit you doesn't mean that you shouldn't have to adhere to the law. There's a lot of laws that don't benefit us that we have to adhere to that are ridiculous. I mean, in California, if I was a motorcycle rider, I'd like to ride without my helmet on. I'm not a motorcycle rider, but I'm thinking if I were, it would be nice to, it's probably one of the things they enjoy is getting out there and letting the wind hit them in the face and the bugs and everything else. And man, it's, but now they have to wear helmets. Is it right? No, I don't know. But it's the law. They should adhere to it. And if they don't, then they have to serve the consequences for it. And, that's just life. That's, move to another country if you don't like our laws. But in the meantime, unless, you want to get involved in a class action where someone's, a majority of people or a large group of people believe it's unconstitutional and violates the First Amendment and file your suit that way, yeah. But I don't think it compares with some of the other things in life that people stood up for. There's probably people turning in their graves that stood up for things that were important when they hear people standing up for such minute issues. We have bigger problems going on in the world than bandit signs and whether they're illegal and whether or not you should file suit against, the government. And you know what? I understand, the same thing can be said for cold calling because politicians can cold call and they're not privy to the do not call list where most everybody else is. They don't have to follow it because they are who they are. I think the argument, and of course we're not ever supposed to talk about politics and religion and all that kind of stuff, but who cares? It's not a law, so I can actually, break the politically correctness of it. But it's like I get frustrated when I see a police officer go faster down the road than he ought to or she ought to. Do I, am I going to speed with them? No. Although my car can go faster than theirs. Does it frustrate me? Yes. Do I know that they're breaking the law, that they're not going that speed because they have someplace to go and that's important? I don't know that to be the case because I'm not listening to their radio. I'm not privy to that information. Sometimes it doesn't seem to be. I've seen people that were police officers in cars that run red lights. They're stopping at the stoplight, hit their siren so they can go, and they go through the light and turn the sirens off. I've seen it, It is what it is. Is it going to piss me off enough to take, the city to court, or the county to court, or whoever is to court? And no, it's not. I'm going to follow the rules. And again, if someone wants to do class action that police officers are using their sirens to run the red lights, maybe I'll get involved. But at the end of the day, our job is to buy houses. That's what's important. And if what you're doing is illegal and will harm you, and I think it will harm you more ways than what you have presented here in the question, then stop doing it. Do it the right way. Do it the legal way. If you want to do bandit signs, I pointed out 3 ways you can do bandit signs. Do some TV if you want to do that kind of marketing. Do some radio if you want, although that sucks. Some radio. Do some other things. But don't do, I wouldn't do bandit signs. And you know what? At the end of the day, in fact, in a year from now, we're going to have a political race for president. I don't know what the filing fee is, but file for your local election and now you can legally put a bandit sign out there. Don't vote for me, but I buy houses. Call 1-800 whatever. And I'm sure that you'll make the news and because you're ridiculing the system, but at the same time, then you can present your argument in public and at the same time you're probably not breaking the law because at that point as long as you paid your entry fee in the political race, you could probably run. And be careful, you might get elected, because there's probably a lot of people out there that think like you do, and will vote for you just in spite of everybody else. That said, great podcast. Sorry I got so caught up in question number 5. I just think it's a bigger question than should I put a bandit sign out or not. I think there's a lot of ethics and morality involved in that question, and it's not always possible, but I try to hold ethics and morality more important than what's legal. And I think when you do it, you're better served. But that's because I've aged and I've got wiser in life as I grow. When you're young and dumb, you can think you're Superman. I had a big OS on my chest for the longest time. I could fly too. If I jumped, I could jump about 6 feet. And so the distance I could fly was 6 feet. So I knew I had an S and I could fly. Anyway, talk to you guys tomorrow. Have fun. Until then, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show. Get more info and stay in touch at michaelquarles.com.
Check 1, 2.
Go! Curious about real estate? Yes! Then you've come to the right place. Get the knowledge you need. Get over the fear and get started. This is the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show with your host, Michael Quarles.
Hello, everybody. Michael Quarles with Podcast 156. There are 5 questions sent in by real estate investors, and they sent them to support@bsffacademy.com. One more time, support@bsffacademy.com. And remember, if you have a question, send it on, and I'll try to answer it. Question number 1, when figuring out which zip codes to market to, should small rural zip codes be automatically ruled out? Not necessarily. Sometimes that's all you have. Now, the further apart the properties are, the harder they're going to be to evaluate, which is an excellent reason to get a BPO and a appraisal. Now, what you may find out also is do some reverse searching. Pick your zip codes that you want, and then find out prior to buying something if you can actually buy or order a BPO in that area. What we have found out is if we can't find the agent to do the BPO, we're absolutely not going to be able to find the buyer as easy to buy the property. So if we can't find an agent that comes out and wants to come out and tell us for $150 what the house is worth, then we are going to say to that house goodbye. So you may want to do something like that when you look at your zip codes if you're in some small rural areas or crime areas. So my suggestion, but if you're in a marketplace that is rural, it's just where you are. Now, you can buy anywhere in the country you want. You don't have to, go see the seller. I mean, it's nice sometimes to go look at front doors, but after a while, that'll be boring. And, out-of-state sellers don't want to see you anyway. So, if you want to get over the hump of, I don't know how to negotiate well over the phone. If someone wants to see me, how do I do that kind of stuff? We'll just market to people that don't want to see you. Question number 2, what should the normal procedure be for canceling the purchase of property? Found out last week that a house was $200,000 in liens that the seller did not mention. Other than telling the seller over the phone, should I also send the seller the title search? Well, if you're under contract, keeping in mind that the seller is obligated contractually to sell it to you for the contracted price. So if they have $200,000 in liens, they should take $200,000. I mean, it's assuming that the $200,000 in liens is in excess of your purchase price. They should take whatever is in excess to closing. Now, I mean, you should at least give them the opportunity to do that. If you just want to just blanket cancel it, I think it's appropriate to have the conversation and let them know. I don't think it's appropriate to just cancel it and never tell them that you're canceling. And if you're a little shy about telling them over the phone or face-to-face, call your closing company and have them draw up a cancellation instruction and have them email it to the person or mail it to the person. So there's several ways or a couple ways that you can do it. But, if you were able to negotiate with them in the first place, that means that you had built rapport in a way. And in this case, if they failed to mention to you they had $200,000 in liens, and they know it, by the way, no one accidentally fails to mention those kinds of things. Now, I did buy a house from a lady that had a Homeland Security lien against her property for millions of dollars, and she wasn't aware of that. So I think she was probably aware that she got mad at Homeland Security at an airport, but she wasn't aware that they put a lien against her person to follow her around the country as she did her personal business. So I guess accidents can happen, but probably not. So at least give them the opportunity to correct the situation by bringing it to closing. And if they can't do that, then let them know you have to cancel. If you don't want to do those two things, call your closing company or your escrow company and have them create an instruction to cancel and send it to the seller. Question number 3, what's the best way to close a subject to deal? Can you get title insurance and close through a title company? Have not yet found a title company that is subject to friendly. You're not asking the right questions if you can't find a title company, because the title company has really very little to do with subject to. It's the escrow closing company that would be the ones that may hinder you in closing and that they just don't understand. But those are some of the questions we ask them. We ask these questions of our service providers before we have the opportunity to buy. And one of the questions we ask is, do you understand what subject to is? And have them explain it to you. Subject to, you can buy a house subject to anything, as long as you're acknowledging that you're not getting clear title because you're buying it subject to those things, or you're buying subject to mechanics liens, tax liens, voluntary liens like mortgages and loans, those kinds of things. You can buy them subject to IRS tax liens. You can buy them subject to child support things, all kinds of stuff. So, but your title company doesn't really care. I mean, title and closing are two different things. They're gonna pull prelim and show you on the prelim that you're not paying this off, and it's going to be subject to you not paying those off. So it's no big deal. In the old days, was 12 years ago or so, I guess the HUD one actually had a subject to line on it. So I mean, it's not so distant that people wouldn't remember. So yeah, just ask the right questions, and always find the service provider before you need them. I mean, there's nothing more embarrassing or more foolish, I think, than not knowing who you're going to use to close a transaction before you need to close the transaction. Because one of the questions the seller is going to ask you, and besides that, they're going to ask you who are we going to use for closing. Besides, and what are you going to say? Well, I don't know. I've never used anybody before. That wouldn't be an appropriate response. But then you also have to meet them down at the closing company to get the memorandum of contract notarized the next day. If you don't have that, you really don't have anything. You have an agreement to sell by the seller, and you have an agreement to buy as the buyer. And yes, you can legally enforce that agreement, but who's going to spend the money to legally enforce it? Where if you have a memorandum of contract, just go down and record it. But before you meet them to get the memorandum of contract signed, you had to do one of, or both, two things prior to that. You're going to have to find a closing company to use. But then you're going to have to take the memorandum down to your county recorder's office and make sure they'll record it, that everything that they need inside of their recording documents are there on that agreement. And so you got to do that kind of stuff in advance.
Thanks for listening to Buy, Sell, Fix, Flip. We'll be right back. Are you running out of leads? It's time you tried Yellow Letters at yellowletters.com. Get motivated seller leads through yellow letters, postcards, zip letters, typed professional letters, greeting cards, door hangers, and business cards. Yellow Letters is a full-service marketing company created with your success in mind. Get the personal attention you need to get your direct mail campaign started, and get in touch at yellowletters.com.
And we are back in 3, 2, 1.
Question number 4. I have a deal in the works on a property in which the owner owes $17,000 in liens and wants $10,000 walkaway money. I'd like to ask the owner to take $10,000, which he needs, and carry back the price of the liens until the property is resold. Or perhaps I can offer something like a payback in 90 days or until the property is resold, whichever comes first. This all seems advantageous to me as the buyer, but my question is this even legal? Absolutely, and it's ethical. So, because especially keep in mind, I know I'm all over the place on this one. Keep in mind, you buy the way you have to buy. Okay, so it has to fit inside your business model. So the sellers don't get to orchestrate how we're going to buy from them. If someone says to me and I have to if I have to buy everything subject to, and they can't, well, I'm just not going to buy it from them. They don't get the opportunity to get my $10,000. So they don't have a choice. So if they don't have a choice, and there's nothing illegal or unethical or immoral about buying a house subject to the existing liens and giving the seller $10,000 up front. Nothing at all. As long as you can get that prelim to acknowledge the lien basis, and you're acknowledging that you're taking it subject to that lien basis, and there's no additional liens that will come up, and if there are, then the title insurance company that you bought title through is going to take care of those unless there's fraud involved in it by you. Then you're fine. Just understand that you're the guy that's going to help the seller. The seller's not helping us. Remember, we're creating win-win situations for everybody, but the reality is we're solving problems. We're solving a seller's problem. So be okay with that. Be okay with the idea that you're going to buy it. You're going to give the seller $10,000. You're going to take $17,000 subject to. I would not put a deed restriction or a time limit on that $17,000. First of all, if it's a payment kind of thing where you're continuing to make a monthly mortgage payment, you're just helping the seller's credit. You're not helping yours. But if it's not a payment thing, a monthly payment mortgage thing, then don't put a time limit on it. I mean, if you do, you're creating a deed restriction. And if you don't honor that deed restriction, then that deed can be unwound by the seller because you didn't honor it. So don't create a deed restriction. Question number 5. So normally when buying a pre-foreclosure or any house, one gets a payoff, which includes prorated interest and fees, etc., from the lender, and it's paid in full at closing. I have heard that investors getting the deed and paying off the principal balance as opposed to the payoff. What risks, if any, are there to the investor buyer? Why would one do this? Would the bank still have a lien worth $0? Would they or would they not cancel the deed mortgage trust mortgage? I'm lost. I would absolutely never pay off a mortgage unless I got a reconveyance from the lien holder. So I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to pay off a mechanic's lien. I'm not going to pay off tax lien. I'm not going to pay off a mortgage or anything, or a deed of trust, until I get a reconveyance. So, that's one of the things we have to make sure of is prior to making the last payments to a seller on a seller carryback or an installment sale. Well, an installment sale doesn't matter because the title's not in your name. But prior to making on a seller finance transaction, you want to make sure that reconveyance is carried out by the seller. So I would use a closing company to do that. So they would the same closing company I used to actually purchase the property. I'd send my last payment to them and instruct them to get a reconveyance. It cost me a little bit of money, but I'm going to make sure that I have everything taken care of. And why anybody would pay off a mortgage without getting that, I think they're a little silly. Because just because you pay off principal balance doesn't necessarily mean that you've paid off the amount owed to the lender, because there could be prepayment penalties. There could be all kinds of things attached to it. There could be late fees that have accumulated that aren't part of the principal balance. There could be, why? I don't get it, but I'm sure someone sat at someone's seminar someday and they said, this is how you do it. Save some money. Yeah, well, if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. That's all I have to say about some of those things. Got to mention, still have 2 seats open for coaching for November, and they're $49.97 up front, then $5,000 from your first deal. Coaching lasts for a year. It's one-on-one with me. And we're in the process of selling a bunch of properties. I hate saying this, but wholesale. So if you're interested, we have like 50 something of them. We keep adding to the list and subtracting from the list. So it fluctuates a little bit, but if you're interested in seeing our inventory, send a shout out to support@bsffacademy.com. All of the deals, I think we're placing them at 65 cents on the dollar. And so I may be wrong on that, so don't hold me to it. But if you want any information, send an email to support@bsffacademy.com. And until tomorrow, talk to you guys then. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show. Get more info and stay in touch at michaelquarles.com.